Friends, travel along with Renee and I as we go up to Detroit, Michigan, to a town called Grosse Pointe, Michigan, where in the 1830s there lived a family known as the Verneys who had a ribbon farm that went all the way down to Lake St. Clair, where I carved reproduction stones to replace the two originals that were in such dilapidated shape. If you like this type of material, please consider subscribing and giving us a thumbs up.
We are here today to not only honour, remember and celebrate their lives, but to preserve the history of the Verney family for generations.
What about that? It's beautiful. Here is my friend Mr. Jim Verney, who commissioned me to carve the reproductions of the two originals, which he had placed in the Grosse Pointe Historical Society gardens here. So he, with some members of the Historical Society, moved the stones here to their potager garden. So we'll listen in as he describes a little bit about that process now.
Cemetery. And the sexton pulled the gravestones out, which was interesting. And we loaded them into my Subaru, and we brought them the Subaru from the cemetery over here. And then Leslie and her husband and I were able to drag them.
You wouldn't have let him, and I shouldn't have let him.
I'm for sorrow tonight, who cares about tomorrow? So while we may, let's drift away when love comes in the moonlight.
So the first night at the Historical Society, Mr. Verney and some others did a brief biographical sketch of the Verney family and the Grosse Pointe area, which was fascinating.
Was successful, granted and confirmed by the United States Commissioners and signed off by President James Madison. This is the land he successfully claimed that we know of farmers to provide them with access to the river, the most efficient route to and from markets. In general, the plots were long, narrow ribbon farms, up to 600 feet wide, that ran from the lake several miles inland. It is reported the large square house was originally built of hewn logs, which rested on a foundation. When Jean-Baptiste and Catherine died, given that Grosse Pointe was without a dedicated cemetery for the parish, it is assumed they were laid to rest on the expansive Verney farm. The homestead was passed to his youngest son, Lawrence Robert, who lived there with his wife, Charlotte Trombley Verney, for the rest of the black solid key line indicate the Verney farms. The cemetery is that of Catherine Verney. These are Jean-Baptiste and Catherine's original headstones that were erected in the cemetery. It should be noted that when Jean-Baptiste was buried, his name had been changed to John, presumably to anglicize it. The stones have remained in place for at least 150 years. Also located in the cemetery is Father
As I called Teresa and I said, my great-great-grandparents, 6 generations back, the gravestone has fallen apart. Cemeteries and how they handle burials, and incredibly fascinating. We have with us tonight, as I shared, and they specialize in 1700s and 1800s, not only the gravestones. 65?
Yep.
That'd be right?
Yep.
And what kind of medicine was it?
Mrs. Smith's magic elixir or something like that.
So whoever put the gravestones in there had a sense of humor. We didn't find any beer bottles or any bourbon or anything like that. But anyhow, the technology was so cool because Don was over there. Bum, 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 bum. Said, Jim, I know what it is. And what he told you was an elixir. So you never know what's going to be in there.
Mostly alcohol and some derivative of cocaine.
I wonder if that had helped anybody get to that cemetery. And last, I wanted to thank my friends at St. Anne's Day Detroit, and for obviously ourselves. I'm very poor at art and drawing, and so I went out to the cemetery on a cloudy, rainy day, much like today, and I taped this to the gravestone, and I rubbed a red crayon, obviously, and was able to duplicate this for John Baptiste and for Catherine. And so I rolled it up and brought it home to Charlotte, and then on to David and Renee's house. And from that, he was able to carve exactly like the original, and be able to take, as he said at lunch today, he said, you know, the fat letters are the tough letters. And knowing how to do those, and it was his first experience with that, so it worked out pretty good. Please. You want to clap for that? The old gravestones are 200 pounds apiece. The new gravestones are 400 pounds apiece. So we had to crate those up in South Carolina and ship them to Grosse Pointe Farms, to St. Paul's on the lake. And that's what was shipped back in February. And you can see that Joe's team, there were, of course, I was doing what I do best. I was supervising the activity, and Joe's team, himself and 3 other guys, did a yeoman's job digging in. And so
the next day, they had the graveside dedication ceremony for the 2 stones. Thankfully, it didn't rain, and we had perfect weather. And Mr. Verney did a great job, and I was even allowed to speak just for a few minutes.
Memorial and celebration of our two not long lost relatives, because we see them. I mean, the beautiful stones are there, and church. She handles the columbariums, and she handles the cemeteries and the bereavement and all that. Teresa Summers, so she's going to introduce Father, and he will.
I'd like to welcome you guys here at St. Paul Cemetery. Father Andrew will be doing a blessing for the headstones right behind me. This has been a blessing to be part of. I was very excited when Jim made the call to the parish office that this is a project that he had held deeply in his heart for corporal works of mercy, to show that the cemetery is not necessarily just for the dead, but also for the living.
How'd I do, Mary?
You did wonderful.
From the book of Revelation. I, John, saw a large white throne, and the one who was sitting on it. The earth and the sky fled from his presence, and there was no place for them. I saw the dead, the great and the lowly, standing before the throne, and scrolls were opened. Then another scroll was opened, the book of life. The dead were judged according to their deeds by what was written in the scrolls. The sea gave up its dead. Then death and Hades gave up their dead. All the dead were judged according to their deeds. Then death and Hades were thrown into the pool of fire. This pool of fire is the second death. Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the pool of fire. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The former heaven and the former earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. The word of the Lord.
I've been carving gravestones with a chisel and mallet alone for the last 21 years. And the mallet is just a piece of wood that my father turned down on the wood lathe, and the chisels are just basic tool steel, you know. And it's the same way basically that man had been carving stones. See the originals for the first time, and they're sculpted. The letters on the inside are basically sculpture. And so don't look at mine so much, but go look at the original out in the garden there and see how sculpted those letters are. They're works of art in themselves. Send me a rubbing of the 2 originals, and I literally took the rubbing and use that to make an exact copy both in height, width, and thickness, and in the letters. The letters are just the work of the man that carved it right here in this area.
Catherine L'Esperance was born on April 25th, 1770 in Windsor, Ontario. Prior to marrying Jean-Baptiste, Catherine was married to Augustine Francois Thibault. They had married in October 1787 in Detroit. Catherine Verney passed in Grosse Pointe on August 21st, 1831, age 61. 3 years later, Jean-Baptiste passed on January the 29th, 1830, on the expansive Verney farm. As a successful businessman and farmer, Jean-Baptiste had accumulated great wealth during his life. He had accumulated around 600 acres of land in Grosse Pointe, and upon his death, he had given each of his children some of that land. Upon his death, the homestead was passed to his youngest son, Lawrence Robert, who lived there with his wife, Charlotte Tremblay Verney, for the rest of their lives. Over the years, there have been many notable family members of the Verney family in Grosse Pointe. Several of them were successful businessmen, politicians, and well-known pillars today. John and Catherine Verney were then laid to rest, and here is their final resting place over 150 years ago. We are here today to not only honour, remember and celebrate their lives, but to preserve the history of the Verney family for generations.
We're so delighted to be working with Karen and Jim Verney, who provided the seed money to really gravestones. The originals from here are in a lovely memorial garden, and we have the beginning seed money for a potager or potager garden, which is a kitchen garden that would have the herbs and the vegetables that the farmers might use, as well as some decorative flowers and pretty shapes. We hope you'll come visit us there. We're working very closely with the French Heritage Society on the French Heritage Corridor, where all the many ancestors came. You know, our ancestors from France and from Montreal came here and made their ribbon farms and
very good. And these are descendants with David.
Really? Y'all are descendants?
Yes, they are.
Y'all both Verney?
Yes.
She's 90. We'll say that.
I am. I'm videotaping now, so.
Okay.
Francis.
Yeah.
And Lynn Verney, and her grandfather and her great-grandfather,
Right.
my grandfather settled in Fairhaven, Michigan from Grosse Pointe here.
Really?
We traded quite a bit of property.
What about that?
Built a hotel, built a
Tell them about your hotel and your restaurant.
1896. Yep.
Really?
And
so was it that Mr. Vernier is he's a restaurateur?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I just gave him a menu from our restaurant.
Really? Oh, that's wonderful.
Pictures of the original building and then the
What about that?
second building. It's still there, but it's empty right now.
Do
Yes.
y'all directly descend from both of
Yes,
those two?
yes.
Really?
John Baptiste, yes.
How many? So was he your fifth great grandfather?
Probably
Fourth
four.
grade?
They said four.
Fourth
They
grade?
told us it was
Okay.
probably four. For him, for me, it's six.
Sixth grade.
Because
for
I'm
you.
two more
So you're two more generations removed.
Yeah.
How about that?
And this is the interesting thing. My roommate from college, who I met 50 years ago,
Yeah.
comes here to take care of her family
Okay.
plot.
Yeah.
One of the Vernier plots is right there. It's right
Really?
across from her.
What about
Our
that?
families were
Just
like
right there.
right next to each other.
Isn't
that
that
crazy?
crazy?
Well,
Oh,
you take it
crazy.
on that. Get in behind you. He's a big tall
Get
guy.
in here. We'll all get all this Vernier in here.
Oh yeah, this is Jim Vernier. Now are you a Vernier? Your name isn't Vernier.
Okay, ready for some pictures?
Okay.
Look here. 1, 2, 3.
Grandfather, Jean-Baptiste
Was
Verney,
yours, so it has to be. How old are you?
67.
I'm 90, so Jim was probably my third.
Third.
Probably my third.
I'm surrounded by Verniers.
Everybody say their name. We'll start.
Okay, go ahead. Lynn.
Lynn.
Vernier Prudhomme.
David Gillespie. I'm just a stone carver.
Jim Verney Vernier. Tom Mahoney.
Vernier. What did I tell you? Vernier. Say Vernier after it.
Vernier. Vernier.
Vernier.
Vernier.
Oh, you're not recording this.
I am. Yes, ma'am. You are on now. Zooming in on you.
Fran Vernier of Robinson. third. I'm third.
Third
You're
great
fourth.
granddaughter.
He's my third great grandfather.
Oh,
My
that's
grandfather, probably my grandfather, traded for the property here in Grosse Pointe for all of Fairhaven.
Good for her.
wow.
Which is like New Baltimore,
She
Fairhaven.
came out of her shyness just last year.
Yep.
At 89, she said, I'm not going to be shy any longer.
Well, the therapist had a hard time with her, getting her out of her shell.
Okay, so now we're going for lunch at the Bronze Door here in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Friends, we thank you so much for watching, and we ask you to please subscribe and like this video and tune in for the next one, Lord's willing. Thank you.